Hello, everybody. We haven't started the webinar yet. This is Ray Navarro with Griffeye, and I see that we've got a number of folks on, some early in the morning, some in the afternoon, some late into the evening. I just wanted to see if all of you could hear me just fine, if my audio is coming in, and that you see the Griffeye 101 splash screen up on your screen. Excellent, excellent. I'm getting a lot of confirmations, so that is great. We're going to give a couple of folks some more time to log in and start at 10 a.m. sharp. So we've got, I see Thailand, I see Switzerland, France, good old USA, Krakow, oh my gosh, Netherlands, all across the world. So this is excellent. Iceland, Canada. Welcome to everyone. So we will give everyone some time to get in, and then we'll begin. We have a minute to go, so bear with me, and we will begin. Look at all the shout outs: New England, Poland, North Carolina, Thailand again, the UK, Russia, Las Vegas. All right. Wisconsin, India, Nebraska, Connecticut. I'm based out of DC, so it's mid-morning for me, and look forward to teaching you guys hopefully something new this morning. Sound to stop. Don't worry, I'm still here. So it is 10 a.m. sharp here on the East Coast. I'm based out of DC. This is Ray Navarro. I'm with Griffeye, Senior Director for North America, and I appreciate everyone that is logged in for this morning's WebEx and webinar on Griffeye. This is Griffeye 101, a crash course in visual media investigations. So just one more check, if I could get a couple more confirmations that you can see Griffeye 101 on your screen and that you hear me loud and clear. Excellent, excellent. I'm getting those confirmations now. As you all can see, you've got our chat up on the screen for today's format. Because I can't hear you all, I would like to definitely open up the presentation, the WebEx to questions, but save those for the end. The presentation and practical portion of the WebEx is going to take about an hour, and then I'm going to save the last half hour to try to field as many questions as I can keep up with, assuming that you all may have some more questions. So to give you a brief introduction to myself, I'm the Senior Director for North America, taking care of things in primarily out of the United States, but taking care of Canada, US, and Mexico. And we've got a number of folks around the world joining us today. Again, some in the wee early hours of the morning, some late into the evening across the entire world. Last time I checked, we had just over 300 or so people at least registered a couple days ago. So love that we've got great attendance. So with that, I shall begin. Some of you may or may not be familiar with Griffeye, but what we try to help law enforcement with is a platform to investigate visual media. We're talking about pictures and videos. This is the premier platform for that. And so why do we do that? Well, pictures and videos are being produced on a massive scale, and it's just getting even more and more pronounced and exponential in growth as time goes on. You've got digital cameras, which are kind of older technology, but continue to make it easy for us to produce those kinds of images or produce images, period, and videos. surveillance cams. Everyone's got a cell phone, or at least two of them. You've got one for work. You've got one for your own personal use. Of course, you've got the internet to post all your images and share, and then your laptop to store them. All these different hard drives. Storage is so easy to get and cheap. It's inexpensive, it's accessible, and so they're being produced on a massive scale. What does that mean? That means that everyone that's on this WebEx now is probably handling that sort of evidence. With it being so easy to produce, it is also a big and important part of your investigation. Here in the United States, we've got the Department of Homeland Security. We have a specific subsection of it, Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, and just them alone in the type of investigations that involve child pornography, they collected over 6 petabytes of data in 2016. I mean, that is a staggering figure, petabytes. I mean, we think in terabytes, we think in gigabytes, but as far as a total, I mean, that is a lot of pictures and videos to mow through, and that is just for that one use case. You've got homicides to investigate. You've got gangs and trafficking and all sorts of other crimes, fraud to track and try to keep up with. And so, this means that you have a problem set that, how do you get through that? I mean, I'm going to keep going and referencing back to the child pornography case, but I mean, those cases, the largest case I've heard of single case involved over 22 gigabytes of pictures and videos. I mean, 22 gigabytes. You buy a laptop and they, by today's standard, 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, maybe 2 terabyte. This is someone that collected, hoarded, stored, and distributed. I mean, this is a wild, wild case. So you need something to help you mow through that. So the bottom line is you are overwhelmed with pictures and videos. And that's what we try to help you with. We're trying to help, and that's what we're going to go over. How do you get through that quickly and efficiently? So the whole idea is to, in the very beginning, you've got all your different sources. You need a way to process and analyze just that overwhelming amount of information. It needs to be automated and prioritized for you so that it's easy, and you have a running head start. And how do you do that? We'll go over that. And basically, it works off a model of having a set of knowns and having your platform, having your software figure out what you don't need to look at and where you should start. Once you have that, and where these are perhaps images and videos that you haven't looked at or hasn't been seen by anybody else, then now you can start your investigation and look, detect, highlight those critical clues so you can prosecute. Once you have that, then perhaps you can find the relationships between the data. Not necessarily full link analysis, but each one of these image and videos, they're typically very rich with embedded information, primarily EXIF, but just from the pictures themselves, they can be indexed in such a way that any sort of visual similarities can also be quickly matched for you. So once you have the important information that you need to focus on, you found all your clues, you need a way to visualize and review it. And if you're doing this, depending on what size your organization is, you've got a single agency, perhaps a police department, a sheriff's department, or a sheriff's office here in the United States that may include a couple of examiners and a couple of investigators that do this type of work. And then you also have the national scale. You got TICAC, you've got the ICAC over here, you've got HSI and federal agencies, large scale organizations. It needs to be able to scale out from the basic level or smallest level out to the national level. And once you have that, you need to be able to manage and organize your information. And if you're doing it right and you're building that repository of knowns, Now you have an intelligence source, and you're building intelligence that you can reference in future cases. Keep accumulating that knowledge. Eventually, the ideal situation is once you've accumulated that knowledge, you can share that information with other organizations and be even stronger in your investigations. Because what you'll see after today is how to cut down your work, but by building that intelligence repository, you're cutting down the work of not just your organization, but if you're sharing it, everyone else. So how does it work? Well, first, Griffeye is a open platform that is modular. The core of the program is to investigate media, visual media, and to build upon it, there is an API. So there's some integrations that are fully built in, such as video fingerprinting with F1, Microsoft Photo DNA for photo stacking and deduplicating, Videntifier for very, very fine, granular level object identification. Then you've got camera forensics if you want to be able to ping out and look for EXIF data on the internet. You've got social media identifier to leverage the social media artifacts that are in the that you can find in the images and videos. I mean, there's all these different ways, but the whole idea is keep it open, keep it plug and ready, provide that API openly to law enforcement and our users, and then other things such as integration or plug-in ability with HubStream, third-party tools such as Magnet, Celebrite, XRY, AMP software is fully integrated now, Nuix. I mean, you got all these different possibilities. But beyond that, if you notice at the bottom of the screen, if you've invested in visual technologies such as facial recognition for your agency, perhaps plate recognition, you've got fingerprinting services, you've got ID card identification, or perhaps passport services in agencies within your countries. All of those are, I mean, those are pictures of everybody. And if you can map those out, index them, and keep them in your intelligence library of hashes, your set of quote unquote knowns, now you've got a really powerful way to get a head start on your work. And that API facilitates plugging into your government-owned systems that you've already invested in. So this way, you don't have a company like ours trying to do what everyone else already does well. We can stay focused on what we do well, which is help you investigate pictures and videos. And then with that API, go ahead and plug in all that other technology to make you even more effective in your investigations. So I hope that all makes sense. And this visual, this diagram helps describe that in a really effective way. So what is being kept track of? So what we have here in the United States is we have a project called Project Vic, and it is a project geared towards those that investigate child pornography, child exploitation, those child sex abuse type of cases. And what is kept track of, this program started up about 5 or 6 years ago, and what it did was it provided a way for law enforcement to collaborate and share all those hashes of known CP, and be able to help others figure out, if their cases contain it, if they're distributing it, if there's victims in there. But the whole idea, or not just victims, but where they are, the whole idea was to make it standardize the way that information is shared through the JSON format, the VIX hash record, which contains everything from binary hashes to robust hashes and fuzzy hashes such as photo DNA, all the EXIF data. They're sharing the categorization so that they can say, hey, these are the hashes and knowns of child pornography. And if you are an investigator that does those type of cases, this helps you in a way that not just processing your cases, but also helping you with your mental health. So you don't have to look at something that someone, not just someone, but 3 other law enforcement officials have already said that is known child porn, known child sex abuse material. You don't have to look at that unless you need to validate, and you can focus on all the different things that haven't been seen by anybody else before. So that is the rundown on Project Vic. The whole idea was open standards and also changing the investigation workflow and mentality from just prosecuting someone for having the bad material to also getting you to a point where you can look at the rest of the material effectively so that we can start not just identifying the victims and the other victims that may be in the data set or maybe in the rest of the digital evidence, but also locate them. This is actually the original, napkin sketch of that idea of sharing, collaborating. And what I like about it is that it has almost forced the industry, the rest of the third-party tools out there, the forensic image acquisition tools, to also find a way to collaborate with each other so that you could share this information freely and easily between the platforms. And that universal language has become the Project Vic format, the JSON format for databases. Very cool stuff. So an example of that workflow would be from left to right. You've got your forensic tool, you've collected all your images, and then you would pump out all those different, just the images and the videos to send it into a software like this to just go ahead and start your investigation on all the visual media. If you want to work in a team environment, you can set it up in a collaboration server setup where everyone is able to work collaboratively, simultaneously on the same case. I had mentioned the case that involved over 22 million images. That's a lot for one person. So perhaps splitting up the work and being able to work real time all in the same case is ideal. And eventually, you're all saving all that work, all the hashes that you're collecting from case to case to case, so that you can reference them perhaps in an enterprise setup and build out that intelligence library and repository of known hashes. When you're in that situation, you've got a really, really good setup for the future. So I had mentioned the Open API. An example of that, and a great example of that, is the work that we've been doing with one of our partners, Magnet. With the Axiom platform, that's kind of a one-stop shop for collecting all your images, right? You can image your hard drives, you can take your cell phone dumps, you can grab some internet artifacts and put it all in one place. But with the integration efforts that we've been working on with Magnet, you can then take the images and videos and send them directly to Griffeye, generally through the JSON format, work on what you need to do, then re-ingest that work back into Axiom so that you can take the case and look at it, prosecute on it from a holistic standpoint, take into account, perhaps also the messages and emails that you've also collected. There's not just images and videos that will seal the deal here. You would need to take the case as a whole, and so doing that and working with Magnet has been great because now there's one integrated platform, or excuse me, two integrated platforms that work seamlessly together to help you work even more effectively. So this is just a little roadmap of kind of where that is, just to kind of inform everyone on this webinar. Right now you have your Magnet Axiom platform. You go ahead and export all your pictures and videos, put them right into your Griffeye platform, do your work. In the near term, we're working on making that kind of a background sync process, that a workflow that you can set up. And the future is to make that a fully automated process between the two platforms so that you can go seamlessly between one and the other. So let's go into some of the more core functions, the techniques that you would be using within Griffeye. First is visual matching. How do we do that, right? You've got binary hashing, you've got robust hashing. So going back to visual matching, that is done through photo DNA, and similar search patterns. So what I've got up on my screen right now is the Griffeye platform. And you'll notice that to the right, after a case is processed, you are bouncing everything off of your knowns. The whole idea is you've got hash databases. So off here to the right, you see that items were already categorized for you. And you've got so many in non-pertinent, so many in, non-pertinent, what one-offs and files of interest, and a set of uncategorized, right? How is that done? First, you've got hash databases. These hash databases, as we mentioned, house the hashes, the binary hashes, specifically SHA-1 and MD5. If you are able to get SHA-256, 384, and also 512, it's keeping track of that. You've got a way here to set up your known hash values. On top of that, you're also keeping your photo DNA hashes. And so there's different ways to do that. Besides those that I had mentioned, you also have, if you notice, NSRL lists that you can pump in. So what does that do for you? Well, here in the United States, we have the National Institute of Standards and Testing, which goes ahead and baselines all the different software that's available and that the government uses. And what it does in that process is it also provides a hash list of known system files. Well, every time you image a hard drive or say a specific operating system, you got a set of files that you know you're going to get every time. The system files, there's probably at least generally over 60,000 of those files each time that you will recover and parse out. And so if you can have a set of known hashes that, say, every time I run into these system files, let's set them aside as not important, basically, then you're reducing the amount that you have to look at. You also have the ability, besides Project Vic here in the United States, if you're working with Interpol and have access to EXIF files, go ahead and put those in as your knowns. You got NCASE and C4P support for C4all and NCASE's tools. You can also put in different files. Let's say you've got animated files, and if you just want to go ahead and throw those in and point the sources to that, then you can go ahead and do that and say these hashes are known categories for us. So that way you can set up your knowns. There was one question. Let's see. I'm going to take 1 second here. I'm seeing a lot of folks now or have been having trouble with their browsers. Chrome is probably the best way to use Webadar Ninja. So those on Firefox or any other browsers, I'm sorry for the troubles you've had, but with Chrome, it's probably your best bet. Oh, looks like Safari works as well. So I hope that clears that up. And the other, I see a question here about FTK. Yes, FTK is also supported. So in this case, let me show you what you would be able to ingest. If I hover over forensic images, you can go ahead and you can ingest raw images such as EO1s from your imaging tools like FTK in case. You've also got support to put in ISOs, DINs, RAWs, DDs, IMGs, DMGs, and VHDs. So if you want to go ahead and put those in, you can put them in directly and just point to ingest those sources. Just one thing to note, Griffeye Analyze is not a forensic tool. And so although it will go ahead and extract all the pictures and videos, it will not carve out from unallocated or the deleted files. You'll want to do that prior to ingesting, and perhaps export it out to a folder format, which is another format that can be supported. So let's say you did this in UFED and you did a file system dump, you put it to the root folder, go ahead and say, hey, this is iPhone 7 Plus, and mark it as such. So It's that's what you can do as far as putting in your different sources. So the first level of efficiency was achieved by go ahead and bouncing off of your knowns, and what you're left with here is a total of, in this small case, almost 6,500 files. Uncategorized, which means it didn't hit any of the databases, were about 1,000. And generally what we're hearing from the ones that are using the platform, they're achieving about anywhere between 80 and 90% efficiency when they have a high quality hash database. So it's pretty effective in that manner. So if you started off with say 6,500 and down to 1,000, you're also achieving another level of efficiency by seeing what is left after clicking on uncategorize. So what I'm left after the uncategorize, you see here 1,000 are left, and then you have 768. That's because of photo stacking. So let me jump back to the slides and go over some of that technology. There is one question I saw here real quick about physical analyzer. That is good if you want to use the C4all XML format. You can also export directly to a JSON format with the attachments. That could work. And I was just teaching some folks here out of a sheriff's office on the West Coast, and we were able to also just put in the binary file from that physical. If you want to just throw in that bin file, because you're not going to worry about all the message databases and things like that. You just need to be able to pull out all the pictures and videos, right? So if you've got a solid .bin file, you can just go ahead and point towards the .bin, and that would be just as effective from the physical, okay? And that would be from any cell phone extraction tool. So when it comes to visual matching technologies, you've got binary and robust hashing. I think for this group, forensic focus, I don't really need to go too much into binary hashing. Essentially, it's a unique fingerprint for every file. So in the case of pictures and videos, if you went in and say modified one of the pixels, it produces a totally different hash. And so it's a good way to find exact matches, right? So in this case, you've got, say, for example, this dog, and its MD5 hash is such. If you find another file, you run into another file that has the same MD5 hash, you got a match. The problem is, as I mentioned, you change that, you modify that same picture just slightly, you're going to produce a different hash, you're not going to get a match. And so you could see this same dog, if you can see it multiple times in your case. So let's say you imaged in your original acquisition tool for a hard drive, and you're reviewing everything in gallery view, you're going to see this same picture just slightly modified over and over again. You don't necessarily want that, especially in a child pornography case. So you've got robust hashing. Robust hashing, essentially using PhotoDNA in this case, allows you, regardless of file format, size, maybe a slight change in hue, to just find the same images and stack them and allow you to deduplicate right off the bat before you even start your review. So what do I mean by that? In Griffeye, let's say you've got these fruits here. It looks like grapes, they're actually gooseberries. And if I hover over the top left corner of the thumbnail, you'll notice there are 6 visual copies. Now those 6 visual copies, let me expand this just a little bit. Those 6 visual copies reside in these folders. You notice I've got 4 different sources for this, actually 5 different sources for this data set. And those different gooseberries, the same pictures, reside in those folders. And there are 2 exact copies, 2 binary copies that are in those locations. So the data set included 8 of these grapes, and you would have normally run into these grapes 8 times, and that's a lot of work, or it could really total up to a lot of work, especially if we're talking about the rest of them. So with the six visual copies, the 2 original JPEGs is same exact size. You notice the other one is a ping in a different resolution, or is a ping file, and the other one is an additional ping in a different resolution. So those are the visual copies. Here is the binary copies, but you are only reviewing this once. And if you want to go ahead and categorize that, you notice that there's a number corresponding to each category. I'm going to change this to category 2 by hitting the button number 2. And now all 6 of those files have been have been categorized with category 2 in this case. This is a generic use case that you're seeing on your screen right now. So that's your next set of efficiency. You've got 1,000, but you're really only reviewing, if you look at the number in the figure down here in the bottom, you're only reviewing 768. So you just removed about 300 items from your view to as far as reviewing. So with PhotoDNA, how does it work? PhotoDNA is essentially a way to normalize photos. It takes an image, turns it to black and white, turns it into a square and grids it out. And each one of these grids then produces a color distribution / histogram that can be matched up. You know, if you've got another one, another photo that happened to be of the same dog, if enough of the blocks match up as far as their color distribution and histogram analysis, you've got a match. And it produces a really lightweight 144 byte unique hash, PhotoDNA hash signature in this case. So you've got that, and it allows you to go ahead and take something like this original picture, apply that threshold for matching, and find the other same photos. And in this case, you've got one that's in black and white, you've got and slightly bigger, you've got another one that is smaller in resolution, but it's the same photo, and so those would be stacked for you within the Griffeye platform. Now, if you've got other ones that are just deviate too much from that threshold, then they're not going to be a match. And so it's really fine-tuned. If something is too small, you've got that. If it's modified too much, such as the one in the bottom that has a little obscured box over the bowl, then it's also not going to be a match. So this allows you to quickly group them and essentially deduplicate, stack them in your review. In that, when that happens, then all of the different duplicates or visual duplicates end up getting pre-categorized, and you're already hitting the ground with a running start, and thereby eliminating things that you don't need to see, especially if they have been pre-categorized as non-pertinent, not important, essentially. And so you're just whittling away all that work before you even start. So before we jump into metadata, let me show you what I'm talking about when you're also leveraging the visual similarities. So let's say, for example, you've got a photo like this. Here's a group of people, and they have picture frames, and you say, you know, I need to find other photos that also have this group of people. The key thing here being picture frames. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter button, and that will produce a set of results that find other photos immediately that share common characteristics to this. Namely, what is being looked for as far as the image vector information is colors, contours, shapes, textures. Texture is really important to find these matches. And so what it did was it found a set of photos that also contain, looks like the common theme here is a picture frame and some of the same people in the same exact outfits. And the next one down then shows your first false positive. So this search technique is not thresholded like it is in PhotoDNA. That way you can still perhaps look at other results. We don't want to eliminate other possibilities, so we have this unthresholded for you. But you can see pretty quickly you found 5 other photos right off the bat that had the same group by hitting enter, right? Now, if I use this as another example, I'm selecting the photo of the child that's in the urban playground with the adult. You can see that the environment in this case is something that also can be taken into account. So I'm going to hit enter to find similar images to that one. And you'll see that you have results that are given to you where there's other photos of the same girl in the same outfit, hanging out with the same adult in the blue polo. If I scroll down through some of the false positives, you'll see that you've got some false positive results, but the results aren't too long. There aren't too many to have to go through, because here's another one where it's the same adult in different orientation with the same young girl. And if you scroll down a little more further, you'll notice that you have another photo, completely different face, but it did pick up on the girl's outfit, and with another adult, because the original adult was actually this person with the blue polo. So that's one easy way to go ahead, just simply picking one and hitting enter. More than likely, if you're investigating one of these photos, it's because you have a specific interest in it, and it's worth just hitting enter to see what other ones were taken probably in the same place or had the same people. You can also try to get a little more granular. I'm noticing that some folks are still having trouble getting up on here, and there was one question about being able to view it later. Yes, we will be providing this for replay after it is done today. And then there was one question about, is there any way of turning this off, specifically regarding reporting due to providing number for CPs? So the one that are exported are the final figure of fully chargeable images. There's not a way to necessarily turn it off, because you can't necessarily reduce the amount of files that you had ingested in the case. That's how many that were in there. It will show you the representation of it, but it will lay out how many visual copies there were and how many actual copies of the image that is being, of the image of interest, because there can only be so many binary duplicates. I hope that helps. So with that, perhaps you want to get a little more granular in your search. So let's say I take this photo, for example. There's a photo of it looks like a female being obscured in a room. So I'm going to double click that to kind of blow it up, and you'll notice that well, perhaps I want to see what other things are going on here in this room, and I can choose a reference point. So I'm going to take the selection tool on top and select a unique reference point in the room, this being, in this case, the stand to her right. And if you want that as your reference point, I'm going to right click and choose to search for similar images to this current frame. And the results are pretty good. You've got a number of photos that were taken in this room that contain that frame, and in some of them, the person is actually revealed and unobscured. So pretty good search right there. Now, what about metadata? Metadata, I mean, it's in almost all your photos. There are going to be definitely cases where it doesn't include metadata, but when it does, I mean, you've got a wealth of information that you can compare against and look for. So, everything from the basic stuff like when it was taken, when the photo was taken, where it was taken, perhaps with GPS data, the camera model, serial number, the resolution. I mean, you've got all this different metadata that can be that is very useful information for you. So what happens when you have that? If we use metadata as our reference point and try to see what other photos share the same metadata, then that is a different keystroke. And I'm going to use one of the photos here. Let's use this one as an example. This one is kind of a dark picture in the back. It looks like the back of a car, perhaps a taxi. And if you wanted to take a closer look, let's do a quick shadow boost and get a better idea of what's going on in this picture. Like, yeah, this is something that I want to compare against and investigate a little further. So you'll notice here that it does contain GPS and EXIF data when I hover over that particular icon in the thumbnail header. So if I take this photo and I do a different keystroke, hold down Shift and hit Enter, you'll find other photos that share that same EXIF. So initially, he was looking at the camera, and the first set of results, if you notice, have him look. The first one is another one of him looking away, but in the bottom of each of these thumbnail headers is GPS and date and resolution. So that would match up on the first 8 results. These were all these first search results by hitting Shift Enter showed me other photos that were taken in the same place, same vicinity, on the same date, with the same resolution. Those are the strongest similarities by EXIF. And if it's with the same resolution, it probably was taken with the same camera. So whoever took his photo in the cab was near this hotel. It could provide probably you a new lead. Say, hey, perhaps I take that initial photo, take it to the hotel, boost it up, and say, hey, have you seen this guy? Because you can tell right away where that photo was taken. And using that as an example, going over to my map view, let's go ahead and turn on some actual cities and streets. You can see where that was initially taken by turning on the GPS, and I'm scrolling down. It looks like it was taken in London. So it's a great way to map it out. If you want to do the same thing, take all the photos. I'm going to select one and pick all of them. Let's go ahead and map out everything. Leverage that GPS data. And so what is presented to me here is where all the different photos were taken across the world. All the red dots represent that. So I can click on each one of these that have GPS data. If you want to refine that a little further, let's say, actually, all I'm interested in is going in and finding where or which photos were taken specifically in the good old US of A. And perhaps to refine it even further, I'm only interested in what photos were taken in the Bay Area. So narrowing down my screen here, I'm going to filter based on that map. And so the results here, you notice I have 2 filters right now based on those Latin long. And these photos in my screen were the ones that were taken in the Bay Area. Going back to my map, plotting out the Bay Area, it looks like a path of photos. There were a number of photos taken in San Francisco and San Jose area. All right. I had talked earlier about AmpT and the integration efforts. So I just want to touch on that a little bit. again, with that open API, you can see that AmpTier is one of the ones listed on this diagram that I want to key in on. They've got a pretty cool set of software, a suite of software that's geared towards law enforcement, and specifically the products that are integrated with AMPT are AMP5, Authenticate, and DVR Convert. So if you want to kind of do a little pre-work on the evidence before ingesting it into Griffeye, or perhaps work on it while you're in Griffeye, you have that integration already built in. So where that is best seen is, I'm going to open up the Analyze Forensic Market, and you'll see down here all the different plugins that are fully integrated and ready for you to enable and work while you're in the platform. Okay. So shifting over from images, now let's talk about videos. With videos, I'm going to filter on just videos now. You'll notice that videos are presented to you in a 64-frame storyboard. That way, while you have videos up, you can get a good sense right away whether or not it's worth taking a look. So if I took this one and I want to do a quick triage, a quick review of it, I can take my mouse and mouse over it just to see what is happening in each video. Nope, 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 nope. This is all junk, right? Well, if I did want to take a closer look at something like this one, surveillance cam on a garage door. Let's go ahead and open that up. This can be presented to you in either a single frame or multi-stream. So you've got six screens or 6 streams, 9 streams or 12 streams, all of them tabbed out. So if you took one of the markers and just went from position 1 to position 2, you've just rolled through the entire video from beginning to start to end, through the 6 different screens. There's also an analysis done here at the bottom that shows you in blue motion, in green nudity, which doesn't apply in this case with the surveillance cam, and there would be another one if there was sound in orange for audio. You've also got to the left the video broken down into chapters, essentially scenes at 5-minute minimum intervals. So that would be to the left for you to kind of pick and choose your different scenes. And I could take a scene like this, kind of see with the overview of that and toggle back and forth. But the power in this type of video when it comes to surveillance is, the motion filtering. So let's say I want to go ahead and take this. There's a lot of dead time, as you can see. And I only care about what's happening when cars are coming in and out. So let's go ahead and apply a motion filter. And you notice these large gray areas pop up. Depending on what threshold that you set over here for sensitivity, you can go ahead and filter on motion, play only the filter points. And now, if you watch the screen and the marker, you'll notice that the marker will jump from the points of the video that have something going on, and then skip all the dead space. So let's speed this up. And now the video can be reviewed where you're only watching the portions where there was something going on. All right. Perhaps you want to get a little more granular than the overall video. If you remember the example that I used with the female in the room and that stand, then we can go ahead and try to pick out a certain part of the video if that's what's of interest to you. So let's say I want to analyze this video, but I only care about what happened around this SUV. So I'm creating a box around it, and the software is going in and analyzing all the frames for this region of the video. And that's the way videos are treated. During the processing of your files, uh, besides hashing and all the different things that's going on, one thing that happens is in videos, frames are extracted and analyzed for you because they're essentially videos are stitched together pictures when it comes down to it. So now that it's been analyzed for movement around just this car using the same technique and filtering out just for motion, you'll notice the graph at the bottom has changed, and I'm going to apply the motion filter. And now, playing at the same sped up 8 times speed, play the filtered portion, and just jump to the points of the video where there was somebody around or something happening around this car, skipping, any passerbys, or it may be perhaps anything else going on that happened outside of the box that I had created. So another really effective way of reviewing videos, perhaps, you want to look at or want to see what happened around a postal box or a doorway. This is an effective way to do that. Now, jumping back to images, let me go back to the thumbnail view and clear all these filters. One thing that I would say at the end of your investigation is a good quote unquote check your work search would be for thumbnail mismatch. So we're going to filter on photos that do not contain or that contain embedded thumbnails within the JPEG or the PNG file that do not match what you see here. So let's say you had acquired, created your image in another tool, and you're doing a review. I would also probably skip over files like this where it's hard to see what's going on. These are low quality, probably really small images, but the thing is, with the thumbnail mismatch filtering, it tells you, let me click on this little dialog, create this dialog, and tells you that there's other thumbnails embedded within that picture. So the first thumbnail is not too bad. The original, that's in this case, is a 50 by 50. And it looks like there's another image that is embedded in there, that is a 160 by 120. It's okay. It gives you a little bit of a better picture, but it looks like there's more than one. And that if we toggle over to the next image, this is a much better one, probably of the original at 570 by 375. And now I've got a much clearer face, and I can work with this. So this is a good check your work technique. That's what I like to call it, where you can look over the things that you may have, overlooked, if you will. So that's one way. So all of these different things that I've shown you, these are things that you can do within the platform. You could be on a closed network, gap system, and you'll be fine. But if you do have access to a white line and an open internet, there's also ways to leverage the information that's embedded in the data set for, using our external third-party tools, tools that ping out of the software. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's use this specific scenario as an example. You've got a case, and you recovered a laptop, a phone, and also recovered a digital camera, a DSLR in this case. So let's go down. That digital camera happened to be a Canon EOS 450D. In this case, there are 108 photos that were taken with the Canon EOS 450D. So let's filter on that. And in this case, this is actually the victim. So you're seeing a lot of photos that were taken of the victim. And you notice that when I hover over this, it matches up. This matches up with the serial number, the EXIF serial number that was used for this photo, or that you got from this photo is 088 and so on, ending in 2234. Well, I want to find other photos that were also taken with that specific serial number. So I'm going to go ahead and right click it and find the photos that were taken with that specific camera body serial number. The results being these photos. Well, if you look closely at the thumbnail header, it looks like there's also a match on camera forensics. Now, I got some folks here from the UK. There's a person out of the UK, Matt Barnes, who started a site called Stolen Camera Finder. He lost his very expensive DSLR, and to try to find it, he created a web crawler tool that basically indexed indexed EXIF data from the internet, open source, and waited until somebody posted a photo that contained EXIF, which matched with his serial number for his camera. And one day he did get an email, and it worked, and he found his camera after that. Well, if I hit camera forensics, it will bring me out to the cameraforensics.com site. Go ahead and click that. Opening on camera forensics now. And what camera forensics does is essentially indexes that open source information, that open source EXIF. Let me bring that over. That's what popped up. And I actually was here, and that photo with that serial number matched up. And one of the photos that was taken was posted to this blog. And if I click on that source, it actually brings me to the Norwegian blog site for what appears to be the owner of that camera. So it's a good way to kind of leverage that information. If you have that EXIF data, go ahead, or excuse me, if you've got a match on camera forensics based on that EXIF, it will tell you, and it can also help you kind of track down on where that photo or who took that photo, or where that photo was taken, or who took it. Now, what if you don't have EXIF data? Well, you got a problem. Especially in the case of social media. So let's go and clear these filters again. And now filter on social media identifier. Now this tool, if I filter on Facebook, what's the problem with social media posts? Well, the EXIF data gets stripped out. These are photos that are posted to the internet, and you've got what Facebook, for example, Facebook will do. It will go ahead and post it. It will rename it and post it, but it won't contain the EXIF data anymore. It'll be stripped out. So if I take these guys right here, this group of buddies, and I see that the social media identifier icon is lit up, I can go ahead and click on social media identifier, and it will take me to the Facebook site from which it was downloaded. And you'll notice that in this case, he's also got his buddies unobscured because it's from the original photo. So that's a way to kind of leverage that information, even if the EXIF is not present. All right. So I'm kind of coming up to the end of my hour, so I'm going to go through a couple more slides and information here. We had talked a little bit about AMP, and so this is a good example of what that photo enhancement can do for you, especially in this case in the bottom, you've got reflections that are getting in the way of a clear picture for you. So going ahead and use that within the Griffeye platform is a pretty powerful way to get some results here. Now we've talked a little bit about the similarity search where you can go ahead and find that information or find matches based on similarities, but you've also got low-level feature extraction. This is where you can take something like a street sign or a tattoo and have that mapped out for you. Videntifier is a tool that is integrated into the Griffeye platform and allows you to pick out those finer details and see what else contains it. So since we're running a little short, let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say you want to find other pictures that contain this tattoo. With that Videntifier technology, what it will do is it'll create unique digital fingerprints for 300 points in the picture. You know, those are typically at hardline edges, high contrast points. And so when you do that, you want to find where this Rivera Kills tattoo exists in any of the other photos. It found it first in this mugshot where it kind of had a bad day. And then you've got another mugshot where it looks like he had a much better day. But with the work of the other folks, who, if you notice, these are bookmarks, associated him with 3 other gang members that led to other relationships. But the point being here, kind of looking at this photo as your starting point. Okay. That is a pretty cool integration right there. So other examples of that would be this mural, where you can see all the different points that were pulled out of it, and digital fingerprints created to find other photos of that mural. Or in this case, you know, depending on what you're keying in on, whether that is the back wall or the person, perhaps logos, those are the matches that were found. And you can see this imaginary person where in one case the ears were matched up and the eyes were matched up. And so a good way to kind of visually see what we're talking about as far as really low level object identification. So in summary, when it comes to you know, these investigations, this is a checklist. It's definitely a fluid document, but based on what we've heard from and feedback that we've received from you know, users and investigators, you want to review your images contained within your hidden and encrypted folders. Make sure you look at that because we're not going to be able to carve it out for you. So go ahead and look at that stuff, especially the deleted files. Carve that, grab that information from the hidden folders. Take into account all your crime scene photos in the backgrounds, because you can use those as reference points to find similarities. You want to search for images taken by any cameras found in the suspect's possession. Look for images with GPS data, because you can map them all out. And look for images with EXIF data, because that's a pretty powerful reference point for you to compare with the other images and videos in your evidence. You want to review images with largest file size first, because those are probably the most important for you. Look for people's names. We didn't get to go into the grid view and keyword matches, but that is something you can search against. And you want to look for new files with embedded thumbnails. This is the thumbnail mismatch example that I was talking about. So with that, I wanted to save some time at the end for questions. And one of the questions, it looks like there was a lot of chat activity. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep track of it and talk at the same time. I go through the presentation, but there was one question regarding DI Core and DI Pro. So DI Core is the free version for law enforcement. And the best way to explain that is if I go to the forensic marketplace, this tells you what is reserved for Pro in the blue and what is free for what is in core version. Now, the only one that's not in blue is camera forensics. Camera forensics is included in Pro, but not included in core. So I hope that answers that question. Let's see, I'm gonna start scrolling through here. Can Griffeye import data from UFED Celebrite? Yes. So in UFED, there is an export function that I believe contains the Griffeye logo that will push out a JSON file and a folder with attachments. And that, in that case, when you want to add that file to Griffeye, I'm going to bring up a prompt here for adding files. What you'll want to do is choose the VIX case format, which is JSON, navigate to where that folder is, and bring that in. Make sure that the attachments folder is in the same folder as the JSON file, and you're good to go. The other option, you notice here for forensic image, you can import the binary. So if you were able to obtain a physical with UFED, you can just go and send in the binary file directly. If you did a logical with UFED, then you want to take the root folder of the logical extraction and just point it to that. So that's another option. How do you get a copy of Griffeye? That's another question. So let me bring that up. Oh, let's see. So what you'll want to do is go to griffeye.com, and over here in the top right is My Griffeye, and you want to go from griffeye.com to My Griffeye in the right, hover down to register, fill all of that in, and then from there we can help you with getting a free license through if you're looking to get a DI core license. Okay. Next question is, do you see Griffeye continuing to provide the DI core for law enforcement for the next several years? I mean, that is our commitment, and we haven't changed it for the last, I think, 6 years. So it's hard for me to predict the future, but I know that we want to keep supporting law enforcement, and now we've not just continued to provide the core / free version to law enforcement, we opened it up to all law enforcement. So I think that's a good sign. It used to just be a pro bono version for those that investigated CSA cases, child sex abuse cases, but now starting this year, it is a free version for all law enforcement. The latest physical is Analyzer 7.2, and it's still exporting an XML and not a JSON. I'd have to double check with Celebrite. Unfortunately, I don't have the latest on where they are. I know that initially it was a C4all export, and the idea was to get it to pump out in JSON. But even if that's the case, the workaround at this point is just to go ahead and, when you choose your import choice, I would go either binary if you got the physical, go ahead and put in the binary directly, or do the logical folder if you've got that. So there was a question here about the difference between DI Core and DI Pro. So hang on 1 second. What I'll do is take a little time to explain that some. You can bear with me. I'm going to bring up another slide deck here. and expand on it a little bit more. So with DI Core, the first difference is in the fingerprinting service, the database manager. Whereas before you had, well, with Core, you kind of have to keep it as a locally maintained hash database. But with DI Pro, you connect unlimited other DI Pros to the same hash database. So that's one big difference. I didn't really mention that. It's a finer detail, but if I kind of stick with this slide deck here, the user interface is pretty much the same. In reporting, you have the ability to create additional templates in DI Pro. So yeah, that's one difference. It's a difference worth noting. So jump across here. Video utility pack. We did the work within the video when it comes to filtering out motion, taking a very specific region of the video and filtering on that region, analyzing it. That is part of the video utility pack, which is only in DI Pro. Everything as far as categorization and intelligence features like floating, tags, bookmarking series, annotations, those are all the same across the board. Except for annotations. We didn't really go over that, but it's a way to mark up the photos with your own comments directly onto the photo. Alerts and notifications, pretty much the same. But the big difference came in the apps. So I had brought that up last time. Let me jump back to Griffeye here. So in the forensic marketplace, the ones that are included in, let's just say, the ones that you have access to in Core are the Forensic Utility Pack, NCMEC Utility Pack, VIX OData, and the NetClean app. So that is the biggest difference. Everything else here that I have in blue and camera forensics, those are reserved for the DI Pro version. So the ones that would probably affect you the most are the video utility pack. When we went to the Facebook page from the photo, the social media identifier, camera forensics, where we went to any other sites that had the same EXIF on the internet as far as the photos that were posted. Those are probably the key apps and capabilities that you'll be missing out on with the Core version. And then with the Pro version, you also have access to not just AmpTier third-party integration, but most of the other integrations down the path that we're working on with other third-party tools. So those are reserved for the Pro user. I hope that answers that question. Now with the densifier, I'd have to get back to you on the pricing there. It is a separate third-party license, but it does require you having the collaboration server instead of the DI Pro license. Just because, as I'd mentioned, with the densifier and the object identification, what's being created are 300 fingerprints per photo, and so that's a pretty heavy load, especially for the database. So you'll want to be on the server license instead of just the individual workstation. So there's that. But the server license starts at $5,000 US. I'm not sure which country you're in, so we can talk about that later on. So regarding, there is another chat here, a message. One of the viewers was able to test it with the UFED, and the best thing to do with the export from UFED is to use the C4all XML format, and it will take it and run with that. So just for your information, and thank you for that. Cost of DI Pro, I can tell you that that's $995 US. I'm not sure which. Let's see, Larry Harrison. So it sounds like you may be here in the US. Just about $1,000 bucks. And Yeah, other question I have, this may be in-depth, but does Analyze make use of multi-core processing such as 8 to 16 core machines? If so, is this configurable to adjust the amount of threads allowed for Analyze to use? Great question. Yes. Griffeye will leverage all of your cores and distribute the workload and all the different tasks and processes across all of your cores. If you have that sort of setup, it's actually the ideal setup. Uh, it will also take advantage, obviously, of all your RAM. At this point, not necessarily or not really leveraging GPUs yet, but the hope and plan is perhaps to do that in the future. But yes, with multi-cores, most definitely, because we are running several or multiple processes every time processing a case. So I hope that answers that question. Are there any other questions that I missed? If it was early on, I probably missed it as the stream of chat messages came through. Please be happy to. Please feel free to put the question back up if you don't mind, just so I can see it. Otherwise, I think that may be it. Free trials. Okay, here's another question. I see free trials on the website. How to go about a point of contact to test the software. I am a point of contact, but the best thing to do, I'll put my point of contact information up in a second. But I want to bring up this page. One second. So everyone sees the Griffeye page. When you register, you will have access to a free trial. So you'll want to go ahead and register here, and you should be good to go. That's the best step. Once you're in, let me show you what the My Griffeye portal looks like. Bear with me one second while I bring up this web page. So once you're in here, this is the Griffeye portal, and I've logged in with my login. And on the top right, you've got products. So I click on products to obtain your trial. All that registration page will do is get you an account with your My Griffeye account. Make sure you use your agency email address. But you'll notice you can either obtain a trial, which will be a DI Pro trial, or a DI Core license, both of which show no cost, free in trial. You can add that to your cart. Let's say, for example, the DI Core. Add to your cart out, and then you'll get an email with that license, and should be good to go. There is a question here. Can Griffeye work with X-Ways or Lace? I know that X-Ways will support the export that you can ingest into Griffeye. You can also, like I said, take the raw images, go ahead and put those in. There's also Lace, and that one I'm not too sure about. I believe, I don't want to give you bad information, so I'm not sure. Griffeye, the question here is, does it require an internet connection to terminal? It does not require an internet connection. We do have an online activation process for your license, but you also have an offline method, and you don't need to use any of the internet related features if you don't. You don't need one. You don't need an internet connection to run it. There's a question here. I noticed in the case I worked yesterday, there are a few identical photos that are 90-degree rotations of one another, but they were not linked in Griffeye as visually similar. Is this just an artifact of photo DNA, or is there a manual way to link them? So when they're rotated like that, photo DNA will not stack them. That's actually one of the limitations. The other limitations is 50 by 50 pixels. If it's too small, it's not going to have enough to compare against. And if there is enough of a change, like say someone tried to obscure their face with a black box, then that won't stack them in photo DNA. Which visually similar, it should be able to find it even with the rotation. But if you want to link them, you can just put them under a common bookmark, but there's no way for you to manually stack them if they haven't been stacked for you. So I hope that works, or I hope that answers your question. And how long does the free pro trial last? It should be 30 days. Yeah, 1 month. 1 month for the trial. So what I did was I brought up the trial license that I could also add to the cart and just check out, and it says subscription length is 1 month. All right, I think that rounds out the questions here. If there are no other questions, let me go ahead and bring up one thing. So some of you wanted my contact information, so I'll go ahead and put that up on the screen for you. And with that, I guess this will conclude today's webinar and WebEx. I truly thank everyone for joining us today. And I have my contact information up on the screen in case you'd like to, in case any other questions come up along the way. Everyone have a great day. It's amazing to see the turnout that we have. It's all across the world, all different times of the day, and I truly appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.